I used to think that cardio was just high intensity interval training, and that if you're not sweating or dripping in sweat, then it doesn't really count. And that it's not really for skinny fat people or skinny people in general. It's just more so for fat people. Like fat people are the only ones that should be on a treadmill. But I was deeply wrong about this. And the way to think about it is high intensity interval training is more so targeting the carbohydrates in your body, whereas low intensity interval training, which is what zone 2 in this case is, which is what we were talking about in this video, targets your fat. So it more so helps with fat oxidation. And what is essentially zone 2 in this case? Zone 2 is usually where your heart rate is going to be at the 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. So if your max heart rate is about 200 beats per minute, your zone 2 would be up anywhere between 120 beats per minute to 140 beats per minute. And this will help you lose the fat, lose the visceral fat. And this will target the fat sources instead of the carb sources. And it's also the sweet spot where you're also going to improve your mitochondria. Your mitochondria is going to be producing more ATP. And the way to think about it is when you are in zone 2 at that heart rate, you will be able to speak sentences, but you won't be essentially able to do much more than that. Like you will be able to speak to someone, talk about it, talk things, but then anything more than that would take a lot more effort. You're still breathing through your nose and you don't feel like you're gasping, but you go for a long time. It's essentially like a walking on a brisk pace. And other two examples in this case would be treadmill walking on an incline, which is what we're going to dive deeper into, outdoor walking at a brisk pace, light cycling, stairmasters at a slow, steady pace, and then shadow boxing or any kind of light back work. The first question that I can think of is like, do skinny fat guys even need cardio? Right? So if you're skinny fat, you have low muscle mass, you have maybe a bit of fat in your belly, should you even worry about cardio? Shouldn't you just go about lifting weights, maybe skipping the rice a bit, and that should work? Well, if you think about it, like that does make sense, but at the same time, your body works differently as a South Asian. You have to like increase your metabolism and also improve your insulin sensitivity and burn fat while preserving muscle. And to do that, zone 2 is the sweet spot where it will actually improve your insulin sensitivity, target your fat sources instead of your carb sources, at the same time increase your metabolism, so you'll actually tone down, feel better, feel more energy at the same time. So I would say zone 2 is essential, especially for skinny fat South Asian guys like us. With that said, how do you train zone 2 on a treadmill? Because that's essentially one of the easiest way to go about it when you're at the gym. The best way to think about this is I would do zone 2 cardio after hitting the weights. So in this case, I would go to a treadmill. I would set the incline to be anywhere from 8% to 12%. I would set the speed to be anywhere from 2.8 miles per hour to 3.5 miles per hour. In this case, I would target 3 miles per hour, set the incline to about 12%, and then for timing, I would stay there for at least 30 minutes. Zone 2 only works for a prolonged time in this case, so 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. 45 minutes being max, and I would slowly build up to the 45 minutes. And you don't really have to sprint in this case. Your heart rate would be around anywhere from 115 to 140, depending on your age. And the way you could calculate it is you take your max heart rate, in this case, that's 220 minus your age. So if you measure a 20-year-old, it's 220 minus 20, that's 200. So 200 is the max heart rate. So in this case, 60 to 70% would be between 120 beats per minute to 140 beats per minute. And that is what is the sweet spot that I would use. And essentially, it's all about staying consistent about it. So when should you do cardio? Should you do zone 2 cardio only when you're cutting, or should you also consider when bulking? Well, for South Asians like us, skinny fat people, you really need to actually do in bulk. Like when you're bulking, you want to lower it where you're aiming for 2 to 3 sessions a week, whereas when you're cutting, you want to go for more of that 4 to 5 sessions per week, or almost every session when you're at the gym. And when you're cutting, you want to combine with a slight calorie deficit, and you want to track your weight, and that would essentially help you in losing the fat but still preserving the muscle. With that said, what is another form of cardio that you can do that is not on a treadmill? In this case, you could also consider boxing. boxing can be cardio. It depends on how you do. If you're just doing light shadow boxing where it's light, you're tapping and you're actually on your feet a lot, that would be considered zone 2 in this case. But if you're hitting the bag intensely, that would be more so like zone 3 and zone 4. And that's not a bad thing to do, but at the same time, for our use case, we're trying to target our fat and not our carb sources. So to target the fat, you want to be at that happy medium between 120 to 140 beats per minute. That is if you are a 20-year-old, but you can actually measure that as depending on your age. And that would actually target your fat, lose the fat, but keep the muscle. If anything, it will actually increase your metabolic state and your mitochondria would be better. You would have more energy at the same time. If you're boxing after lifting, think of it like a short condition finisher, like anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes max. Moderate pace, don't go all in. Focus on rhythm, breathing, and technique, not exhaustion. With that said, what are other forms of cardio that you can consider? In this case, we already spoke about walking, which is 10K walks outside. That is about 1.5 hours of walking. You could definitely can consider that. Cycling, Stairmaster, swimming, jump rope. Jump rope would be low intensity with long duration, and you want to avoid anything that's high intensity, basically that spikes cortisol and drains recovery if you're already lifting and trying to grow muscle. With that said, the final takeaway that I would say is zone 2 cardio is for everyone. If you're skinny fat, if you're fat, if you're in the mid zone, whatever it is, it will help you regardless. It will increase your energy, it will target the fat that you have, and overall it will improve your health. And if you want to stop looking soft, get more so on that fit train, then feel free to reach out to me. I am one DM away. And with that said, cheers.